Check, check. Check.
Hello, hello. A warm good afternoon to you all. Today we will be holding the 8th prestigious Professor Wig Oration. May I request our residents to present flower bouquet to our worthy Dean Academic Sir, Professor Ratho Sir. Followed by today's speaker, Professor Mohan Isaac Sir. We also would like to present a bouquet to Mr. Siddharth Wig, the son of Professor Wig Sir. And also to our organizing sir, HOD sir, Professor Devashish Basu sir. So moving ahead, now I would like to request our Professor Basu sir to kindly introduce the speaker for today's oration.
It's a pleasure for me and a matter of honor to introduce Professor Mohan Isaac here, which can be a bit embarrassing for me because I have known sir for so many decades and I have seen him in a very different light, not as a direct teacher, but he's one of those teacher of teachers, you know. So it's a very different relationship. But here I am to do the honors for introduction of the speaker. I'll take 3-4 minutes, but there'll be two parts. One is the formal introduction, which is Dr. Mohan Isaac. He's a clinical professor of psychiatry at the Faculty of Medical and Health Sciences, University of Western Australia at Perth in Australia, and a consultant psychiatrist, currently in charge of the early interventions in psychosis team and the assertive community treatment team, the ACT team at Fremantle Hospital, Fremantle, Australia. He was formerly the professor of Psychiatry at the University of Western Australia, and prior to that, professor and head of the oldest and the largest academic department of psychiatry in India at the National Institute of Mental Health and Neurosciences, in short, NIMHANS, Bangalore, for many, many years, for 30 years. During more than 30 years of his academic and clinical work in India, he was actively involved in the development and implementation of India's National Mental Health Program, of course, in which PGI also played an important role in the form of Professor N.N. Wig. His research interests include delivery of mental health services in low-income countries, and he's presently involved in a program for capacity building in mental health care services, training and research in low and middle-income Asian countries. Dr. Isaac has assisted the World Health Organization in various capacities in numerous locations and on numerous occasions, including a stint at the headquarters in Geneva for about 3 years. He has also assisted various other international organizations, such as the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees, the UNRWA, which has been, okay, the Asian Development Bank, Manila, United Mission to Nepal, Kathmandu, the Royal Netherlands Embassy in India, in short, a global mission and global man on matters, and of course, our own Ministry of Health in New Delhi on matters related to mental health in a wide, long-standing capacity and very, very diverse. He works with various NGOs, particularly in India. He's the immediate past president of the Society for Community Health Awareness Research and Action, and the Medico-Pastoral Association, with whom he has had a very long association. He and Madam is also here, Dr. Leela, I think she's some, yeah, that's right, yes ma'am. So you're also most cordially welcome. Now, allow me a minute or so of a slightly different side, because I was not very happy with this bio blur when I wrote an email to Dr. Isaac. I said, sir, I'm not very happy with this form. Write me a little bit more. So I'm not going to read the whole part of it. I'll put a redacted portion of it here, just a little bit. So this is in first person, because an email. So with his kind consent, as I say, a partly redacted portion. After completing MBBS from Bangalore Medical College in 1972, you certainly do not look that, no way. I have not seen him change over the past around 30 years that I have been seeing him. Anyway, since then, after a long journey, he has worked with very important people and has been in NIMHANS from 1975, in fact, in 1974, that's 50 years, and that's what I think we are going to hear from him, probably the journey of 50 years. And he has then worked with a legend of psychiatry who is still there, and he still works with him, I know, Dr. Norman Sartorius, and he still does those leadership programs which are extremely, extremely good. Some of us, I think Shalini, Abhishek, they have already undergone that program. Then he writes, I'll finish off with this, I carried out my MD thesis 1977 to 78 under the guidance of another legendary person, Professor Ravi L. Kapoor. And I'm glad to state that the brief paper from my thesis was published. I was telling Param just now that because he's a neurologist and he's an epilepsy expert. So I said, the paper from my thesis was published, in bracket, without any changes or alterations in the Lancet. For all of you who know that a Lancet, okay, I don't need to talk about Lancet in 1978. And that paper is called An Inexpensive Method for Detecting Psychosis and Epilepsy in the General Population. The Lancet, 1978, volume number so-and-so, R.L. Kapoor and M. Isaac. And a more detailed paper later came out in the British Journal of Psychiatry, a cost-effectiveness analysis of 3 different methods of psychiatric case finding in the general population. So here we are. I don't think I'll stand between Dr. Isaac and you any further, but sir, it is our pleasure and honor to have you here. Most welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening the audience about our worthy speaker. Now, may I request our Dean Academics, sir, Professor R.K. Ratho, sir, to kindly tell the audience about this oration, Professor N.N. Wig oration.
Good afternoon. Welcome to this 8th oration of Professor N.N. Wig. We have the eminent persons, our medical superintendent, Professor Vipin Kaushal, the former heads of the Department of Psychiatry, Professor Kulhara, Professor Avasti, Professor Mattu. We have two alumni of our institute. I could feel very happy to know and just have a little bit interaction. Professor Murthy from Nimhans, Bangalore, and Professor Sudhir Khandelwal from AIIMS, New Delhi. All my senior faculty. And more attractive is Mr. Siddharth Wig, the persona who is sitting here representing today's the oration. All my faculty, students, researchers. It is the Professor Wig, the persona he had seldom needs any introduction to the audience, except for the newcomers. And maybe, I don't know, the orator also belongs to this place. He must be knowing so much of the things. So, Professor Narendranath Wig, born in 1st of October 1930 from the West Punjab of Gujranwala, he completed his MBBS from KG Medical College, Lucknow, followed by MD Medicine in the University of Lucknow in 1958. Immediately moved on a Rockefeller Foundation Fellowship to Maudsley Hospital Psychiatry at London and Pittsburgh. Then he had double diploma in psychological medicine in England and Scotland. Then he came back to the Lucknow Medical College as a lecturer in neuropsychiatry. In 1963, on the very day of this September, the 16th of September, he joined PGI as a faculty. Imagine that was the founder figure. 1962 started, 63 he was here, and 68 he established the Department of Psychiatry. Now you can think of in world map, this must be in a very high position. Great credit goes to him. And being a youngest professor by one of the youngest professors, by age of 38, he became head of the department and continued till 1980 in PGI. I learned from Professor Murthy that he was there in All India Institute till 1984. Then he had gone for a regional advisory position of WHO, and I think worked in EMRO. And most interesting is that he established a mental health program, not only in India, 22 countries around, a person going to that extent, establishing a situation. Not only that, he had a peripheral mental health program. I think he was running in Raipur, Rani. And that became a model for the national mental health program of India. So wherever he has put his steps, it's established a procedure, a fellow and program. This is such a person, they are really like visionary. There is no comparison for the clinician, researcher, the vision. A person goes with vision. That's great. And we need people like him as a visionary because we have energy. Now we have resources. We have infrastructure facilities, everything, but we need some vision. So if somebody instills this vision, you can think of the growth unparalleled, unending. I could learn that he has immense contribution in the area of nosology, culture-based syndromes, psychotherapy, psychiatry, and mental health programs. All this, a person with such a caliber definitely deserves to be applauded. A great person And I invite all of you on this occasion to this hall for such an important oration. And a person not less than Mohan Isaac. He's you can say his academic excellence, what I heard, is par excellence. And we are proud, sir, because you have spent time and you be with us, and we will be definitely enlightened after that. I congratulate the department for conducting, on behalf of the director PGI, for conducting such type of activities, and I hope that future also will have better than this. So thank you very much. Jai Hind.
Thank you, sir, for educating our younger generation about Professor N.N. Wig. May I now invite our speaker, Professor Mohan Isaac, sir, to kindly deliver the oration.
Okay, I'll just start. Thank you very much. While waiting for the slides to come, may I slideshow per dalna. Yeah, previous, okay. May I express my immense gratitude to the head of the department, Debashish Basu, and the whole department for very kindly inviting me to deliver this oration in the name of somebody whom I have immensely admired, respected, and have learned a lot from, Professor N.N. Wig. I'm delighted his son Siddharth is here, whom I have met when he didn't have a gray beard, gray hair, etc. Maybe in Alexandria, I think. Anyway, that was a long time ago, and I'm delighted that you're here. Now, it is for me a great privilege and honor to be delivering an oration in the name of somebody whom you have admired and respected all your life. So let me begin. I'll spend a little more time on why I chose to speak on what I am speaking, and the actual material that I am speaking, I will go through. I have lots of slides. In my great enthusiasm and passion, I put together lots of slides. I don't know whether I'll be able to go through and give full justice to all the slides. I will not, perhaps not, but Debashish told me that it will be recorded, it will be available, so people can go through the slides at their own leisure. And this is particularly for the postgraduate and the youngsters. Now let me begin. This is a quote from an American motivational writer. He's not very famous. Many of you may not know him. His name is William Arthur Ward. He's a motivational writer. He says, the mediocre teacher tells, the good teacher explains, the superior teacher demonstrates, the great teacher inspires. I'm sure all of us have had different kinds of teachers who fall into different categories, starting from our school days, college days, medical school days, postgraduate training days. But the person in whose name we are having this oration today, Professor N.N. Wig, is one of those great teachers who inspired not only his own students who came directly under him, but large number of people who peripherally came under him. Now, this is a picture I liked. There are hundreds of pictures available on the web from the PGI book, etc., etc. But this is a picture which I like because this is the picture I have in my mind. Always engaging, lot of non-verbal communication, always pleasant, laughing, etc. And to mention my own association, I will quote from one of his papers which I recently read. This is a paper that he wrote and published in the Indian Journal of Psychiatry about the pioneers of Indian psychiatry. He himself is a pioneer of Indian psychiatry, and imagine he is writing about pioneers of Indian psychiatry. He was writing about Professor N.C. Surya. And I quote here from his paper, he was never formally my teacher, but I have learned a lot from him, both in psychiatry and in personal life. This is Professor Wig writing about N.C. Surya in this particular paper. Dr. Surya, in that paper he writes how when he was in England, he saw a publication of the Royal College or English, and the only Indian name mentioned was Surya's. He had not even met him at that time. So he said for a British author at that time to quote an Indian person, it's very rare. So one of the things he did when he came to India was to go and see Dr. Surya. Anyway, that's a different story. So my own association with Dr. Wig is the same. He was never formally my teacher, but I have learned a lot from him, both in psychiatry and in personal life. And of course, the respected dean mentioned about Professor Wig going to the EMRO, the Eastern Mediterranean Regional Office of the WHO in 1984. And his tutelage of me, in a way, formally began after he went there, because he invited me to be a short-term consultant to the very now infamous place that is the United Nations Relief and Works Agency for Palestinian Refugees. It was a WHO consultancy, but it was with UNRWA. Today, UNRWA, the head of the department knows much more. He talks about it. To even say that you were part of the consultant, etc., you would be viewed with suspicion, at least by some people, some influential people. But I had the privilege to work at that time, thanks to Dr. Wig and many more associations. So I will not, I mean, the dean has already introduced him. There's a lot of information about Professor Wig, so I don't want to take any more time talking about him. So when Debashish invited me, and he said, you can choose any topic, I learned that this was introduced 7 years ago. The first orator was Wig's own student, eminent alumnus of this institute. I am delighted Dr. Srinivasamurthy is sitting here. And many other orators were very eminent and distinguished past students of this department. Dr. Kulhara, Dr. Avasthi, I'm delighted they are all here. And I feel also very privileged that I've been in that list. So I was in a dilemma. What should I talk? I mean, PGI, eminent department, eminent people have given orations in the past. So I thought, I must say that it was mentioned by Debashish, 1975 and consequently 50 years, Golden Jubilee, 2025, is an important year for me because I joined NIMANS in 1974, but my first diploma, my first qualification in psychiatry was in 1975. Before completing MD, I got DPM, Diploma in Psychological Medicine, the old Maudsley DPM. Today, nobody talks about psychiatry as psychological medicine, but that's how our diploma is, DPM, and I got it in 1975. So it's a very special year because this is the Golden Jubilee after. So I thought I will, and instead of looking forward, very difficult, and you know, you can't see. I will briefly touch upon that, but I thought I will rather look backwards. And that is how I chose the change. And then I realized that psychiatry, what I learned in NIMANS at that time, is not the psychiatry that I practice. But having said that, at the core, it is the same thing. You still treat people with schizophrenia, people with bipolar, may not be with chlorpromazine and haloperidol, but with olanzapine. Those days you had people with EPS walking like statues, but today you have people with the metabolic syndrome. So while lots of things have changed, our knowledge is tremendously advanced, many things have not changed. So I thought I will talk about a kaleidoscopic view, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that. The past 50 years I spent, after finishing DPM, I spent nearly 30 years in the Department of Psychiatry, during which about 3 years I spent at the WHO Division of Mental Health in Geneva, and then in the last several years I am working at the University of Western Australia. So that is the past 50 years. It is from that experiential base I am making this view of the past years. Now many of you may or may not know what a kaleidoscopic, it's a metaphorical expression. But for those of you who do, I mean the neurologist, I know that Dr. Vivek Lal is a neurologist. A kaleidoscopic vision is a symptom of a neurological problem like migraine. It's like, so it's you having visual kind of problems. That is the term kaleidoscopic vision. But here I'm using, now what is a kaleidoscope? It's an optical instrument, essentially a tube that uses two or more angle mirrors and loose, colorful objects to create beautiful, symmetrical, and ever-changing patterns through multiple reflections. Why I use this term is, as I look back, it is like looking through a kaleidoscope. Lots of images come, lots of people who have influenced me, lot of people whose writings have tremendously had a role. So I'm going to give you that kind of a kaleidoscopic view of the past. So there are a number of things. In a 45-minute or 50-minute lecture, I cannot complete all that. I chose to speak on 5 things. 3 of them in little more detail, 2 of them just mentioned. What are they? Certain things which have not changed in the past 50 years. Stigma and psychiatry bashing and the anti-psychiatry movement. I'll explain. We have been talking about how it's going, but as of today, it's not gone. It is still very much there. In 2-3 weeks' time, I'll be going to Prague to attend the World Congress of Psychiatry. I may or may not be definite about many things, but one thing I am very definite about is, even before I enter into the World Congress of Psychiatry hall, there'll be a demonstration. Black flags and all very colorful. They'll distribute lots of things, maybe some of them even better than the things that the conference people will offer you. This is the Church of Scientology people talking about psychiatry being negative, ECT being not good, etc. That's why anti-psychiatry movement is not gone. Going, but not gone. Then second, I'll talk a little bit about deinstitutionalization. Started with great intentions, well-intentioned, but unforeseen consequences. Then third, which is a very positive thing, what is occurring all over the world today, they are making an appeal to transform mental health services, and this is called the recovery movement. How did this come up? It came up with patient narratives, carer narratives of their experience, and their influence on the mental health establishment. In a way, it should have begun. In fact, the mental hygiene movement started in the 1910s when Clifford Beers wrote a book, The Mind That Found Itself. It is same kind of a thing which has brought on the recovery movement. Then those 3 I'll touch upon a little bit fairly quickly, and the last 2 points, all through my academic career, we have been talking about the poor reliability of psychiatric diagnosis. 2 psychiatrists don't agree on the diagnosis. It must be happening here also. When you go on rounds, people not agreeing. Poor reliability and validity of psychiatric diagnosis. And the classic paper about validity of psychiatric diagnosis is from Eli Robbins and Sam Guzay from the Washington University School of Medicine. And they published a paper in 1970. Many of you may know it, the validity of psychiatric diagnosis. How do you establish the validity? 50 years later, the poor reliability validity issue is still a problem. We worked on a common language, the ICD 8, 9, 10, 11. Now today we have 11, DSM 3, 4, 5, TR, etc. But we are talking now about transdiagnostic approach. We are talking about high top. We are talking about clinical staging of psychiatric problems, etc. It's a process which is ongoing. And lastly, and I will quote some people at the end, increasing mental health awareness. While stigma is still there, greater awareness of mental health, which is good, of course, but it's also causing a lot of problem. Pathologization of distress, medicalization of normal behavior variations, and neurodiagnosis. Large number of people. Today, you talk to any Western psychiatrist, they will talk about their problems. Adult ADHD, autism spectrum disorders, borderline personality disorder now being retermed, complex post-traumatic stress disorder, gender dysphoria, children as young as 5 or 6 saying, no, I am not a male, I want to be a female, get me this, that. These are the things which psychiatrists in Western world are grappling with. But If you don't listen to or follow any of my slides, the kaleidoscopic slides, if you remember the 3 messages, which is the wisdom that I got from the last 50 years, that should be more than enough. I thought, since there will not be time, I will tell them up front. What are the 3 messages? First is, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. 2, change is the only constant in life. And 3, learn, unlearn, and relearn. None of these are my own. I will introduce you to the people, the originators of all these ideas. This is George Santayana, who is a Spanish philosopher. He was born in Spain, but he went to live like a lot of those people during a certain part of the last century, went to the United States. He said, those who do not remember the past are condemned to repeat it. It's self-evident, I believe it. And that's one of the reasons why I thought I will speak not about the future of psychiatry, but about the past of psychiatry. This is, of course, much more before George Santayana. Heraclitus is a Greek philosopher. You will, of course, know Aristotle and Socrates and Plato and all that. Heraclitus is even pre-Socrates, to maybe 300 or 400 years before Socrates. And he says, change is the only constant in life. I'm sure you will all agree that it is not in the field of psychiatry that we practice, but in our own personal life also, change is the only constant that we face. And third, this is what all of you will have to prepare to be doing. This is what I have done. This is what many of my colleagues sitting in the front row would be doing. Learn, but very soon you have to unlearn and relearn. This is again not what I am saying. The great writer of the 1970s, Alvin Toffler, he talked about the future shock. He writes in one of his books, the illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. So mind you, all the young postgraduates, to pass your exam, you have to learn what is being taught. But be prepared to unlearn at least some of those things and relearn the new things which are coming. So these are my 3 messages. From now onwards, I'll quickly go over the slides because I have large number of slides. The first is stigma, psychiatry bashing, and the anti-psychiatry movement. Going, not gone. Bashing, where does it come from? This is again from a paper. This is a study on medical students. Bash is bad-mouthing attitudes and stigmatization in healthcare. Now, when I joined psychiatry, one of the papers that I read was a paper by a very renowned neurologist, Henry Miller, British neurologist. He later became the vice chancellor of the Newcastle upon Tyne University. He wrote in a paper, Psychiatry, Medicine or Magic, 1969 paper. The psychiatrist must be the first and foremost, and psychiatrist must be first and foremost and all the time a physician. You know, this is a conversation which we have been having. And he says, in fact, psychiatry is neurology without physical science. And then he says the most meritorious thing. He called it calls for diagnostic virtuosity of the highest order. Because we don't have biomarkers, we don't have science. We go by symptoms, we go by conversation, observation, interpretation. He also said that simple fact is that a psychiatrist is a physician who takes a proper history at the first consultation. If you read Henry Miller's paper, he writes all these things, but it is a lot of sarcasm. He is making fun of psychiatrists. Then, of course, came the famous books, The Death of Psychiatry by Fuller Torrey. This is, when I was doing my DPM, I got to read this. Subsequently, Psychiatry at Crossroads. If you believed all that they said, I would have given up psychiatry. The fact that I didn't give up psychiatry continued, and now 50 years later, giving an oration in the name of one of our most distinguished psychiatrists of our country means that they said The Death of Psychiatry. These are books which are still available. Some of them are available because nobody buys. They are online, available free. I would advise all of you to read this. This is Fuller Torrey. He's a great man. He now talks about increasing beds. He talks about the American mental health system becoming toxic, etc., etc. He's about nearing 90 years, very active still. This is the other book. Now, in Fuller Torrey, later on said that psychiatry has the same future as a medical specialty as hand-wound gramophones have a stereo equipment. You know what? None of the younger people here would know, but some of the older people know. At least I know my father had that kind of you have to wind the gramophone, and as the winding goes down, Lata Mangeshkar or Mohammad Rafi, they become very slow and then it stops. You have to go and... So he says psychiatry has the same future as a medical specialty as a hand-wound gramophone has as a stereo equipment. This is what he said. I'm sure he believes different. Psychiatry is an emperor without clothes. Then, of course, came, while we were doing psychiatry, there were very eminent people, most widely read psychiatrists. Some of their records may not have been still broken. In fact, they made a lot of money being authors. I have no time to go into the details. I'll quickly go through R.D. Laing. He's a Scottish psychiatrist who experimented using LSD about taking it and writing about it. And he said there's nothing called this mental illness. This is all bullshit. This is one of his very famous books, The Politics of Experience and the Bird of Paradise. Then, of course, Thomas Szasz, again, Hungarian Jew, went to America, psychiatrist. He was working in, I think, Downstate Medical Center. He wrote a book called The Myth of Mental Illness. Both R.D. Laing and Thomas Szasz made much more money as authors because their books were very, very popular. Bestsellers in the 1970s, when the anti-psychiatry movement was also rapidly growing. Sacred symbol of psychiatry. At that time also, there were people who were biologically interested. Simo Ketty said that if schizophrenia is a myth, it's a myth with a strong genetic component. Okay, the Church of Scientology, you know, many film actors, very famous actors fund this. It was, of course, started by Ron Hubbard. There is Psychiatry and Industry of Death Museum in Los Angeles. Those who go to Los Angeles may want to go and see this museum. Now, that is in the 70s and 80s. But what I am saying is it is not gone. Today, if anybody talks anywhere in the world about mental health, the word which always comes is crisis. Is a noun, time of intense difficulty or danger. This is how mental health is described today. I'll quickly go through. This is a Lancet Psychiatry's Identity Crisis. Out of mind, psychiatry in crisis. This is not the current, but the previous Minister of Mental Health in Western Australia, where I work, Helen Morton, mental health is in crisis. This is Paul Murray, who is a lead writer, columnist in one of the newspapers in Australia, mental system ill. Now, this is not a journalist. He is Henry Nasrallah, editor-in-chief of his journal, is Psychiatry Rife for Creative Destruction. Unhinged. The trouble with psychiatry, a doctor's revelation about a profession in crisis. Anatomy of an Epidemic. You are all familiar with maybe some of these books you have reviewed in your department. If you are not, I would urge that you should review some of these books. Exploring the Antidepressant Myth. Irving Kirsch is a psychologist who said you are giving unnecessarily. You are only supporting the pharmaceutical companies. Mad in America, of course, is a very popular website started by Robert Whittaker. It is not just that. The other side from our side, this is from the American Journal of Psychiatry. The moral therapy of the 19th century has been replaced by the immoral lack of therapy in the 21st century. This is about mentally ill people in jails. This is again Henry Nasrallah. So a lot of people from within our profession has written about it, out of concern, out of anguish, out of angst. What is our future? Can we remain a psychiatrist? Is psychiatry in the future? The future of psychiatry is as a clinical neuroscience. Should psychiatry and neurology merge as a single discipline? Psychiatrists, an endangered species. I'm going to end by saying psychiatry has a bright future. So all the people who are doing MD or just recently finished, don't get disheartened. I'm only saying that the bashing of psychiatry, we thought it is going, but it is still not gone. It is very much there. Psychiatry is an endangered species. The anti-psychiatry movement, is it dead, diminishing, or developing? These are all papers from American Journal of Psychiatry or other journals. Please go through them and read them later on. Can we end the stigma and discrimination in mental health? Very recent editorial in the Lancet. The Lancet Psychiatry appointed a commission on ending stigma and discrimination. Law and policy are essential but insufficient to end stigma. Centering lived experience in anti-stigma campaigns. As I will tell you, lived experience, people came in and the recovery movement started. So, stigma, psychiatry bashing, anti-psychiatry is very much there, even 50 years later. I took you from the time, The Death of Psychiatry, Fuller Torrey's book, and Henry Miller's article, Psychiatry, Magic or Medicine, to the current day. Deinstitutionalization was started. Again, I'll quickly go through the slides. The last 40, 50 years, if you were to summarize, it is not 40, 50, 100 years. The rise of the asylums, the fall of the asylums, and growth of community care, and today we are in balanced care. This is what I think Graham Thornycroft wrote. Quickly, some of the old asylums in Britain. This is in America. This is people who have gone to Pune. If they have gone to Yerwada, the jail and the mental hospital are on either side. This is the Pratasik Manogyarik Shala of Pune, one of the largest mental hospitals in India. Does anyone know where this is from? One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Jack Nicholson. Incidentally, for those of you who are interested in movies, in the whole of 90 years plus history of Oscars, there's only 2 movies which have won the best 5. Many movies have won 7, 8 Oscars. But the best 5 are the best picture, the best actor, the best actress, the best director, and the best screenplay. Till today, in the 90 years or so of Oscar, only 2 movies have won that. The first one is One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, which shows about mental. I'm now talking about factors which contributed to the deinstitutionalization movement. Irving Goffman, who wrote about stigma, but he also wrote about asylums. Then, of course, there are people who contributed to it. Again, no time to go into the details. This is the famous President John Kennedy signing the Community Care Act. Incidentally, in November 1963, one of the last official documents that he signed before he was assassinated. You know that he was assassinated in November 1963. This is, again, many of you may not know because the British never wrote about him. He's an Italian. He was responsible. He is known as the man who closed the asylum, Franco Basaglia. He is responsible for the Law 180. Again, I will not go into the details. I am only provoking you to read and understand all these things. This is Enoch Powell. He was a British politician. He was a health minister, and he is the one who initiated the debate on closing the mental hospitals or reducing the size of mental hospitals in UK. He made a speech. It is famously called the Water Tower speech, because all mental hospitals in UK had big water towers. And he said that the water towers have to be broken, again saying that mental hospitals had no role. 1961 or so. This is, of course, Eleanor Roosevelt, who talked about human rights, and human rights of the mentally ill came much more later. So what we today follow, this is from a paper by Graham Thornycroft, Sir Graham Thornycroft and Michelle Tansella, Pragmatic Balance of Hospital. It's balanced care. This is what is being followed everywhere. But there are unintended consequences of the deinstitutionalization. Mentally ill, homeless in America, everywhere in the world. I think the homeless, mentally ill, I've not done any research. It is my impression that they are increasing in India, because I find that homes for the homeless mentally ill are increasing in the past 10, 15 years in India. Banyan was there for homeless mentally ill women, but many more are there in the country. Mentally ill in jails and prisons, we don't know about that in India, but in most Western countries, number of people in jails with a mental illness diagnosis steadily increasing. Mentally ill people living virtual asylums in the community. Some of the authors who work on this have called this reinstitutionalization or trans-institutionalization. Emergency room boarding is a big problem. In all Western countries, mentally ill people, there are no beds. So much so now many of them are building newer places, especially forensic beds, emergency room boarding, law enforcement impacts, more and more cases. About a few months back in Sydney, there was a man who was off treatment, who was on clozapine, but the psychiatrist himself or herself stopped the treatment. He was functioning apparently well. He went and killed 8 women in a Sydney mall. And of course, in the coronial inquiry is very instructive it's available freely, it's worth reading. Violent crimes and homicides, steady increase in the number of forensic beds, places in supervised and supported housing is increasing, increased risk of aversion in societies for mentally ill, etc. On the one hand, awareness is increasing, I'll come to that a little later on, but stigma, if at all anything, it's only. This is just an example. This is from American Journal of Psychiatry. It's called bus therapy. I don't think any of you would have known about bus therapy, a problematic practice in psychiatry. Essentially, it is, there is a problem patient, you buy a one-way ticket and send him to the next state so that he will get down, he will wander around. Some social workers will come and pick him, so he will no more be your responsibility. You read this paper and you will know more about bus therapy. This is Fuller Torrey. Much later, he wrote a book called The American Psychosis. Obsessive hope disorders is Australia. It's about what is happening in Australia. Things have essentially not changed. It's not all bad. There are good things. This is the report by the Schizophrenia Commission. The commission was chaired by Sir Robin Murray. They said the early intervention psychosis pioneered by Pat McGorry of Australia is, this commission report says that this is the great innovation of the last 10 years. More and more people are identified young, chronicity is prevented. Again, Rethink Mental Illness report, if you go, you will know. And of course, we think that stigma can be changed if you change the name. Should the term schizophrenia be abolished? Examples from Japan. In eastern part of Asia, this has already occurred. Precedents of manic depressive disorder, mental retardation. So, of course, in Japan and Korea, they have their local terms. So some people say, should we call it Kraepelin-Bloiler disorder? Anyway, this is a debate which is going on. Now, patient narratives and lived experience, and the carer involvement, which has pushed the recovery movement, which is a guiding force in mental health programs all over the world. Now, what are these patient narratives? The first one is a book which I read as a DPM student again. A copy of this book was there in Nimman's library. It was All India Institute of Mental Health at that time, a mind that found itself. He was probably not suffering from schizophrenia, but an affective disorder. He was one of those very few lucky persons who could get out of a New York mental hospital, and he wrote about his experiences. Okay? I'm quoting from his book, most sane people think that no insane person can reason logically, but this is not true. His book and his work in a way started the mental hygiene movement, did not pick up very much, nobody knew about it. Clifford Beers was an ex-mental health patient and author of The Mind That Found Itself. He founded the Committee of Mental Hygiene. Then much more recently, An Unquiet Mind, many of you may have read this, Kay Redfield Jamison, who is a professor of psychology, she writes about moods and madness, her bipolarity, personal narrative. The center cannot hold. This is again another journey through madness. No one cares. This is narrative by parents. No one cares about crazy people. Now, Ron Powers is a very well-known journalist, and his, I think, one or two sons had schizophrenia, and he writes about the difficulties in facing mental health, dealing with the American mental health system. A memoir of enduring, surviving, and overcoming family mental illness, unhinged. So, this is now about carers' role in mental hospital. I'm very fond of this picture. This picture is John Nash and Alicia Nash. John Nash famously won Nobel Prize. He had schizophrenia. He never took medicines. He's famously known for he was the revolving door, and ultimately Alicia, who fell in love with him and got married when he was a tutor in Princeton, I think, and later divorced, and seeing him going round and round and round, care of streets, nobody caring for him, she went to him, and I believe they got remarried. The Beautiful Mind movie is about his life. The book, Sylvia Nasser's book, worth reading, great details. But that's not the reason why I showed this. This is Nancy Anderson, not a social psychiatrist, a biological psychiatrist. More than a decade, editor-in-chief of the American Journal of Psychiatry. She wrote an introspection piece in the American Journal of Psychiatry, John and Alicia Nash, a beautiful love story. Worth reading. She is a schizophrenia researcher, biomedically oriented psychiatrist. And she says, to me, they are the best remembered together as one of the great love stories of all time. That is the love part, but more importantly, without her, there very likely would have been no recovery and no Nobel Prize. The carer's role. Genuine caring makes significant difference for the recipient. Carers often have various concerns. Carers constitute an informal workforce whose contributions are not adequately recognized. Carers crave for more information. I'm mentioning this because very often we don't realize all this. We don't even recognize the carers. We have no time to spend for them. Okay. But of course, the carers movement in India is also growing. This is the cover of Amrit Bakshi's book. Dr. Murthy, I know, works very closely with him. He's a member of an organization in Pune called the Schizophrenia Awareness Association. He is more recently, in 2024, come out with not just his experience, but I think a dozen people who have father or wife or a son or a parent who suffers from schizophrenia, and their experience and how they are coping with it. So recovery has become, the other most powerful paper was Patricia Deegan, again a psychologist. She wrote about recovery, the lived experience. Then of course, Bill Anthony, Robert Paul Lieberman, they all talked about recovery. And today, it is reshaping our clinical and scientific responsibilities. Schizophrenia recovery is not a myth. You have to have medications, of course, adequate caring, we know about Julian Lepp's work on expressed emotion, etc. And those of you who attended the conference last 3 days here would have also learned about cultural variations and all that. Okay, now I'm just concluding. I know the time is getting up. Reliability and validity of the diagnosis. We know about the famous science paper on being sane in insane places. We know about the UK-USA diagnostic studies. And of course, Eli Robbins and Sam Guzey, who were chairs of the department, one of the most best known and most prestigious departments of psychiatry in the 60s, 70s, 80s in USA, the Washington University School of Medicine. All American leaders of psychiatry in the century have come from there, just like the Institute of Psychiatry, Maudsley in UK. So we were, the WHO and all, we were working on a common language. But what has happened? We have the DSM-TR, DSM-5-TR I mentioned, forgot to put 5, ICD-11. We have but research domain criteria. We are talking about transdiagnostic approach, and the latest is the hierarchical taxonomy of psychopathology. We have a long way to go to reach that. Now the last part, increasing mental health awareness, pathologization of distress, self-diagnosis and new syndromes. No time to go into that. But the big culprits are adult ADHD, autism spectrum disorder, PTSD and complex PTSD, gender dysphoria. Lots of stories about it. You talk to a young Western trained psychiatrist from UK or Australia or Canada, tell them about how they are managing gender dysphoria, and you will know. Okay, so to conclude, I talked about 5 things. I will quote 5 people and conclude. One is Eric Kandel, the Nobel laureate, 2000, he shared with Arvid Carlson and others. He wrote a paper on new intellectual framework for psychiatry, worth reading, how to go through neuroscience advances. Second, this is Sir Robin Murray. I understand that in PGI he has given a lecture. And again, I'm quoting from his paper, The Mistakes I Have Made. I ignored social factors for 20 years. My preconceptions had made me blind to the influence of the social environment. He says that they are very important. I mean, he says how Julian Leff was working on social factors, he was working on biological factors. These things, his preconceptions and prejudices blinded him. He talks about the social factors. This is Tom Insel, who was for more than 15 years handling the biggest mental health budget. He was the director of the NIMH USA, very powerful man. All the billions of dollars that he was handling went into biomedical research. After he retired, some of these people, it's only after retiring that you get to reflect. And that is when you realize some of this. Billions of dollars spent on that. Now, what does he say in this book, worth reading? He says he went and he was giving a talk. He writes in the book, nothing my colleagues and I were doing addressed the ever-increasing urgency or magnitude of the suffering millions of Americans were living through and dying from. He quotes, after the big talk, he asked, it's a public talk, you know, lay people, professionals everywhere, and then one old man raised up his hand and he asked a question. This is according to the book Tom Insel writes in the book. And the man said, our house is on fire and you are talking about the chemistry of the paint. Very often this is what we all do. The problem, the suffering of the family, the person, etc. We are talking about the chemistry of the paint. Now this is another person with whom I've had the privilege to interact with on numerous occasions, is Arthur Kleinman. He wrote a paper, Rebalancing Academic Psychiatry, Why It Needs to Happen and Now. He says, academic psychiatry has lost sight of the human face and crucibles of mental illness. It has hollowed out psychiatric research, spirit and humanity. Academic psychiatry has poorly served the profession and mentally ill. And the last of the quotes is from, and I will end, Professor Simon Wesley. He was a former president of the Royal College of Psychiatrists. He was the first psychiatrist president of the Royal Society of Medicine, and he is one of the very small number, just a handful of people among psychiatrists who have been elected to the Royal Society. He's a fellow of the Royal Society. He is also Sir Simon. Now, this few years ago, he said, every time we have a mental health awareness week, my spirits sink. We don't need people to be more aware. We can't deal with the ones who already are aware. I'm really worried that we will overstretch and demoralize our mental health services if all we do is raise awareness but don't provide more people better circumstances, better support, and less burden of regulation. Working in Australia, I feel this every day. You have people with minor... Earlier on, you used to refer to them as the worried well. This is not really the worried well. They have distress. They come, they go through the internet, do some checklist, and they'll tell the doctor, I have ADHD. The doctor, unfortunately, many psychiatrists, very well paying, you prescribe amphetamines, you get a good fees, and then, of course, people like me working in the public sector, see some of these amphetamine-induced psychosis later on. I would end with this. This is not a psychiatrist. I don't know if this morning I was having breakfast with Dr. Murthy, who is the first orator of this oration. He told me after 50 plus years, he's few more years than me, he said psychiatry is a mystery to me even today. So I will end with this quote. This is Donald Rumsfeld, very famous defense secretary of United States. At a different time. Today also US politicians are very famous for other reasons. He was, when the Americans thought there were weapons of mass destruction and send the forces to Iraq, and they didn't find anything. But he was one of those responsible. But I like his quote. His biography, the cover is his biography. It is titled Knowns and Unknowns. He says, as we know, there are no known knowns. These are things we know. We also know there are known unknowns. That is to say, we know there are some things that we do not know. The problem really is, but there are also unknown unknowns. The ones we don't know. So I would stop here. Thank you very much for a patient listening.
Thank you, sir, for such an enriching oration. May I now request our Dean Academic Sir and HOD Sir to kindly present a memento and to felicitate our speaker. Thank you, sir. May I now propose a vote of thanks. I would like to thank our director, sir, who has extended full support for this oration. I'd like to thank Professor Ratho, sir, and Medical Superintendent Bipin Kausal, sir, for gracing this occasion. I would like to thank Professor R.S. Murthy, sir, Professor Khandelwal, sir, for gracing this occasion. I would like to thank our past HODs, Professor Kulhara, sir, Avasti, sir, Mattu, sir, and Madam Kohli, madam, to gracing this occasion. I would like to thank all the faculties who have come from different departments for this oration. And also I would like to thank all the faculty of our department, especially Professor Subodh, sir, for organizing this oration, and all the residents, professional staff, and support staff, and last but not the least, Professor Biman Sakia, sir, and his team for telecasting this oration on the YouTube. Thank you, sir, and I request everybody to join for tea in the LT foyer. Thank you. We can now stand for the national anthem.